Illinois Valley, thus decreasing the cost of insurance for residents, businesses, and local governments. This alliance, knowing again that it's cooperative, a bunch of people up and down the river, not just one town or one county, this alliance has helped secure critical federal grants to help its participating communities with flood prevention investments. Here are just a few of the examples. $1.2 million to Marseille, Illinois, in pre-disaster mitigation funds for the construction of a flood wall and a pumping station to protect the city's disaster mitigation funds for the construction of a flood wall, $4 million to Ottawa, Illinois, for the construction of new sections and upgrades to existing sections of a flood wall levee system protecting Ottawa, the construction of new sections and upgrades to existing sections. $687,000 to the village of Depew for the construction of a flood wall and floodwater storage basin to protect a wastewater treatment plant. $365,000 to the city of Peru for the construction of a flood wall to protect the city's east wastewater treatment plant. Those happen to be examples where they badly needed little sections of flood walls. If you're thinking, oh, all they're doing is proposing flood walls. No way. They're really doing a great deal with zoning and other kinds of natural restoration efforts along the river, but knowing in some places you got important public facilities that simply need to be, but knowing they're willing to get, the government is willing to give that money to protect those critical features, knowing that they're taking other steps to keep people back and help people move away from the floodplain. So, and they've pushed, of course, the National Flood Insurance Program's community rating system, which is the CRS, which is a key component of any flood resiliency program. Right now, in these metro areas around here, only Davenport on your side of the river, and Moline on our side of the river, and the Whiteside County, just up the river from Rock Island County. Those are the only 3 units so far in our area that are in that. If we're going to get some of the benefits of these federal grants and good flood protection program, we got to form a network. Now, if you can come to that meeting, that's on the second day, Thursday afternoon from 2:30 to 5. That's when you're invited to come. When I was in Milan, Illinois, at their council 10 days ago, they said, well, what are we going to be told what to do? And I said, no, nobody is going to push this thing. The only way this is going to come off is if there are people at that session from the communities like yours who then decide what we want to do. That's why this isn't a go and listen session. This is a come, listen, and then talk with one another and see whether that's a one-time event, done and over, or, gee, let's keep looking at this and see what kind of a structure will come out of it. But if nobody, this is for us on River Action, we worked hard this year to form something so it isn't just a talk conference. What can we do to deal with this? And a couple of years ago, when there's a bigger conference and people were coming from up and down the Mississippi, one of the big concerns was for flooding. And so that's why we decided, let's have a workshop where people can walk away and there actually may be a structure. But people have to be there. If we've gone to the trouble to do this, and that Paul Osmond, who got some of these national and regionally good people to come, if we have all of them come, and there are 5 communities from the whole middle section of the Mississippi that are there, okay, it's over. We're not going to get people to come in 2019, 2020. So that's why we really would like to have you come. The cost of that workshop is $25. So as I told my Rock Island City Council a few nights ago, for $100, not very much to strain your budget, you could send 2 staff people and maybe 2 people on the council who could then be there and really come back with a good idea. And as I say, we hope good things will come, but we don't know. You got to show up. So
Mr. Moline, could you share the dates again for the folks at home?
Yes, October 24th and 25th. It's a Wednesday and Thursday. Often that conference used to be Thursday and Friday, but then people said, no, council people and others, they don't want to worry about a Friday afternoon session, so move it to middle of the week instead. Any questions? You're gracious to share this time.
Council?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moline. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. I hope we'll see some of you there.
Your Honor, if I can
Yes.
interrupt for just a moment.
Certainly.
Apparently, we're rebroadcasting the August 2nd meeting on TV right now.
Are we?
That's what I'm told, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think our people back in the back room probably heard that. I'm not in a position to fix it, though. They'll work on it. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on to the second thing on tonight's agenda, which is a housing TIF request, and Mr. Mike Nolan is going to present.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to let me give you a little bit of idea of what we're thinking and kind of present a proposal this evening for a new residential tax increment financing proposal. I'm Michael Nolan. I am representing NPSW LLC. We're a consortium of local folks who are interested in doing some good things for Muscatine. We've been looking at several different projects and ideas for the last year or so, and this is the first one that really kind of came together. We looked at several different sources, just looking around the area, but then also looking at the comprehensive plan, looking at the recent housing market analysis study, and what we really want to do is help take some of these things to the next step. So I hope that running through this just kind of lets you know where we are, and then see if there's a way we can kind of come up with a public-private partnership to get to the next steps.
Mr. Nolan, before we get started, can I ask you to please speak directly into the microphone? Our folks at home struggle a little bit to hear.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Absolutely. So what's our vision? The vision is to provide the opportunity for a new energy-efficient mid-market neighborhood in the city of Muscatine. One thing we note, and I've been working in the area for about 4 years in residential, commercial, and then also with the county. If you look, all of the current development, particularly the residential development, is outside of the bypass. So everything is out in the county. And what you're seeing in the county is large lot, larger residences that are kind of hitting a price point which we all know is not affordable. The idea here, particularly kind of piggybacking on the market analysis study, is what can we do to stimulate a little bit higher density and at a more affordable price point inside of Muscatine. And I'll talk a little more to the idea of what we're not proposing is affordable per HUD standard at this point, but the goal is to hit a point in the market that's not being serviced right now with the intent of getting movement on the end with the existing stock that will kind of free up some of those homes that are currently being probably either bought or sat on by people that don't have an option, aren't looking to move to a $500,000 house, but are, don't necessarily want to stay in the $150,000 to $200,000 existing home they have. So the goals of this project are to provide an inviting community connected neighborhood within the city limits that will appeal to a blend of residents. We look at this as a great opportunity for young professionals, for working families, also for empty nesters who are looking to downsize and maybe go to something with a little less maintenance. I want to stimulate the housing market to facilitate future market-based development. The idea here is that we don't want to come back. If this is successful, there's a whole, talking with the city staff and looking at the comprehensive plan, there's a whole swath of kind of future land slated for development. We'd like to see this build some momentum to where this starts to take off on its own. And in the future, using this as a kind of a seed project, kind of get that going and keep that housing analysis working. And we're looking to develop lots that will allow new construction single-family homes for under $250,000. Just quickly, that's not a number we come to arbitrarily. So in my experience as an architect and working in resident, we have really beat up the idea of what can you build a very good quality around a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home in that 1,200 to 1,500 square foot range. So definitely not the big McMansions people are thinking of, but just good quality housing. And just with the escalation, cost of building, everything else has gone on, that 175 to 200,000, I love that number. I wish we could do that. It just does not, at this point, is not a very feasible number for a single-family home. And I'll talk a little bit about our approach potentially with doing some attached single-family housing, more like townhomes, might be a way to get closer to that price point. But at this point, our analysis is based off of trying to hit that price point for a $250,000 home or less. So the lot we're looking at, there's 12 acres currently owned by Brian Wolf Sr. It's actually accessed off of Fulham Avenue and Duncan Drive, so south of Cedar and north of Lucas. It's adjacent to Discovery Park and great location, and we understand that there has been proposal in the past for this lot development, and there were some concerns about traffic. Prior to the improvement of these lots on the schedule we have put forth, the traffic circle will be in place, so we're confident that's going to alleviate the traffic issues by adding new residents to this area in that neighborhood. Things we really liked about the lot is it's close in. It's right there is one of the lots that was identified as a great area for improvement. We're also going to try and piggyback by creating that draw for the adjacency to Discovery Park. And then also, we've been in discussions with Andrew about how do we kind of incorporate the West Side Trail expansion as a community amenity to bring into this neighborhood and also help out with kind of bringing that all together. And we look at that as a great perk for people who live here. Creates an opportunity for recreation, but then also alternative human-powered transportation to and from downtown. So preliminarily, we've been working with Martin Whitaker, and they have generously donated time to help put this together. This is everything to this point is all of our hobby, if you will. But we really wanted to make sure that we had something that was very viable and come up with the approach that would work. So what we're looking at is approximately 60 lots, and this is actually rotated. North would be up on this, so the access off of Folium would be to the bottom right of the page. 60 lots, and looking for a potential mix of single-family and attached single-family homes when we get into the final platting and the layout of the space. That's when we'll really work that. The other portion we'll work in here is where does the trail incorporate into that. We've had a few ideas and a few discussions, but we want to look at is the overall the best way to get that through and make that work for the city and work also for the new residents of the neighborhood. Looking at about 60 by 100 lots, which anybody who's looked at lots knows that's a smaller lot, but we have I've worked out a few plans for houses that would allow for, one thing we really want to look at is single level living, so accessibility for, it's not just for, nobody's getting older. We might have friends who are getting older that want to come over and visit. It'd be nice to have a bedroom, a bath, and a kitchen all on one level. One of the issues with current housing, existing housing stock, is that they're either split levels or 2 stories where there's not really the ability for somebody to age in place in a home. Also great for somebody who has a new baby. It'd be nice to walk right into the house, not have to get up and down stairs. But that's really what we're trying to focus on, is something that will appeal to a broad variety of audiences. The targeted sale price we're looking at, or at least for the lot for our analysis, and this is in discussing with realtors, seeing what the likelihood is. We think around $25,500 is a likely sale price. So some of the numbers you'll see coming up are based off of that sale price. So far, so good. Until you start to look at how do we get this done. And I apologize, this is very much an eye chart for anybody that's looking at that. You guys should have in your packet a blow up of this, but this is kind of an excerpt of the pro forma we put together. Big picture, the potential revenue, $25,500 times 60 lots. It gets me to about $1.53 million of potential revenue for this project. Total project cost, including land and the breakout, is about $1.45 million. So you see, if on day one, if I was able to go do this, write a check out of my pocket, and everything sold right away, then I would have potential for $80,000 profit. Unfortunately, I looked at my piggy bank. I don't have that sitting around, so we're going to have to go to the bank and finance this. Again, I really do apologize for this, but there is a long, and I'll make sure you all have a copy of this. Basically, the bottom line shows the expected debt service that we're going to have to pay year over year, and really it comes out to, starts around $175,000 a year for debt service on the project. So right off the bat, you can see from a market-based solution, if we were just able to come in, develop the land, sell the land, it's just not feasible because you eat up any sort of profit in the first 6 months it's open, and particularly looking at a realistic sellout of around 10 years for the project over that time, it's definitely not going to, it doesn't work. So that's a little bit of our dilemma, and that's where we approach the city to see what were some opportunities to partner to help kind of stimulate this project. Our proposed solution is essentially a combination of TIF funding and also using the sewer infrastructure trust fund to help offset some of the initial upfront costs of the project, and then use the TIF in the latter years of the project to help with cash flow to cover some of the cost of financing the other operating costs. What you'll see is over time, operating costs go down because there's less lots you have to deal with, so that's taking care of the taxes, maintenance and upkeep of everything that's there. And as we're paying down the loans, we're also diminishing financing. So really what I've done, you'll see on the next sheet, to come up with the number we're asking for TIF is to kind of fine tune that to where there's just positive cash flow year over year until the end of the project. At this point, if there's any profit to be had, you'll see that that's going to be pushed out later on to essentially years 11 and 12 when there's no longer any lots left. And at that point, we're just taking the residuals from the TIF, and that's really kind of making us whole on the first part of the project there. So this is, we worked with the city and with Andrew to come up with this, basically a chart to put together how the TIF would work. And essentially what we're asking for is a 65% TIF over 10 years. And we want that to commence with basically the completion of the first home. What that does is at that point, when the first home is sold, and anybody that's bought a home, knows that that's delayed like a year, you pay forward, and then essentially 2 years after that first home is commenced is when we would expect to have that first income. So in that time, we're kind of running a fine balance, and it's probably deeper in the weeds than anybody wants to go, but trying to keep our debt to equity in a positive position so that the bank is happy, and then after that point, it kind of smooths out and everything kind of follows a line progression throughout. Just a little of analysis there. So the current taxation on that piece of land, 12 acres, is about $1,400 a year. The far right column, you can see that what the city was going to receive year over year with the new improvements on there. Essentially, over the 10 years, the city will have an additional $340,000 on its tax rolls total. And then after year 10, when the TIF goes away, the city will have an additional $150,000 per year of tax as a result of this new development.
Before we go any further, I think it's important to clarify on the 10 years and the 65%, the developer doesn't actually receive the entire 65%. Of that 65%, 60% goes to the developer and 40% goes to the city, because this is an LMI project, and that generates the dollars that they need to get the project done. So that's it's 60% of 65. So that 10-year 65% TIF, it's actually 60% of that goes to the developer. 40% goes to the city to do LMI projects somewhere within the city. So it's actually less than a 65% TIF. I think it ends up to be 39 or something like that.
We actually didn't get any packets.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there were, and no attachments. So this is where, so if you could, I'm sure maybe you gave it to staff and they didn't.
Okay.
So we'll send you the final one that you have here tonight. We can forward that on to council.
Okay, I apologize. I distributed that out first of the week. So that will have all of these. There's a couple of charts and tables to show what's happening. And thanks, Greg, for the clarification on that. So again, within this table, if my numbers are correct, essentially we're looking at however that gets broken out. That total in the second column from the right is what we're asking for year over year, and that is the number that kicks back into the pro forma spreadsheet. So who doesn't love a spreadsheet, right?
So just to be clear, that 10-year 65% generates just over $1 million, $1,061,000, and the city would receive $424,000 in LMI funds from that, and the developer would receive $637,000 over that 10-year period. So it's not actually 65% that they're receiving, because it's a housing project.
Gotcha.
I like Greg's numbers even better. Okay.
Nancy's.
I like Nancy's numbers even better. So where are we at? So next steps and timeline. Essentially, if this makes sense and the city wants to move forward with this, then we need to complete our site design and engineering. We have the preliminary site plan layout. There's still a fair amount of work left to be done with that, but we have far enough with our experts and looking at that and say, yes, this is going to work. We need to work through the administrative, the site plan approval, and the subdivision approval. I have some people who are very optimistic and would like to start moving dirt this fall, and I'm probably more realistic. I don't think we're going to get started before the spring by the time we get through basically all the design work, approvals, things along that line. Ideally, we have lots to be ready to build on in the fall of 2019, so next fall, and then the first homes will come online in spring of 2020. We have had some conversation with people who are very interested and excited in this project. That's why you'll see when I go through my analysis that there's a little bit of front load. Ideally, this sells out much quicker and everything gets done, and then we kind of move on to the next thing. A little bit of the pessimist in me, or just the realist, I want to run it over time at a realistic rate. Nobody knows what's going to happen day to day. Right now it's great. 2 years could be maybe not so much. But based off of historic, I think selling out in 12 to 18 lots in the first couple of years and then about 6 to 5 for the next many years seems like a realistic approach. So the goal would have the neighborhood totally built out by 2030. All right, final thoughts. This feels like the right project and the right location. We've looked at the city documents. We feel like we're all on the same approach, trying to take that next step, taking a lot of the recommendations and really the good work that's been done by consultants on the previous studies. It's in accordance with the comprehensive plan. It's actually in the market analysis study. There were kind of 3 thresholds that says this is the time to use TIF from the city standpoint. Project not viable without TIF. I mean, if this is not something that works, then kind of move on to the next thing. This is not going to be viable unless we have some help from the city on this. Attempting to meet a challenging price point. Like I said, sub 250 is great, and we're really working hard. That's something that's not being really provided in the market right now. Most of the new stuff that's been built, even the duplexes, are selling for $275,000 to $300,000. So we're really trying to beat that number up and get it to a point where we can provide that in the marketplace. And then demonstrate a viable product that's not currently offered. Ideally, this takes off, we get a lot of interest, things go great, and then we have a lot of people coming in and say, hey, okay, we can do this in Muscatine, and it kind of takes off and is self-sustaining from there. Support the city goal of the completion of the West Side Trail. It was when we started talking about that, and that was a possibility. I got real giddy because I bike everywhere that I can, and the idea of being able to live in a neighborhood that I could get all the way around the city and not ever have to get in a car, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. Let's get that housing market moving again. Stagnant is not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing because things are fairly well sold out, but what you have right now is the stagnant part is that there's just not any movement in the existing housing stock because there's really nowhere for people to go. So the idea is here, if we can get young professionals, empty nesters out of the houses that they're competing on, maybe at the affordable end of the market with, then that starts moving again, and then you start to have that portion of the stock gets freed up. So that's really the long-term goal of this project. And then appealing to a variety of ages. We want to see a neighborhood here. We don't want to see just one demographic, one age here. Let's have a true neighborhood of people of all ages and creeds, everything in this one spot. And that's all I have. So I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you have.
Your Honor, just a couple clarifications before we start. So a couple things. I mentioned the LMI benefit to the city of Muscatine that can be used throughout the city. The trail was mentioned, and by bringing it from Hauser straight through to this location and connecting up with the county at this point, it actually helps bring that cost down, which is already higher than expected. So that helps bring that cost down. And that's actually a sewer benefit district that they're asking to create for a small portion of the sewer work, and that benefit district then is repaid to the city when the individual ties on to the sewer. And that would be created for a small portion, not all of the sewer. And then the TIF request would be going for public infrastructure. That's been identified as part of the project, so only for the public infrastructure portion of the project.
And the sewer will be attached to each individual lot, so if somebody buys 5 lots for some weird reason, they're going to pay 5 tap fees, not 1. Andrew is shaking his head yes. Thank you.
As part of the that would be set up under the benefit district.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
We've discussed that and how we would basically put the subdivision regulations together, but we really talked about having a clause in there that if you buy, you need to build, because doing the buy and hold doesn't really help anybody out, and we want to see this built out. So we've seen a lot of, this happens all over the place. Hey, I'm going to buy 2 lots. Well, that's not really in the best interest. What we're trying to do is create density here. By having 2 lots, you're really kind of diluting the whole intent of the project.
Councilwoman Brockett?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I have spoken with some folks who live on West Fulham, and the neighbors there are concerned about the drainage, the streets, and the number of homes. So do you plan to get together with those folks and talk with them and ease their concerns about what's going on? Because, I think part of it is just fear of the unknown. They don't know what's going on, and they're hearing all kinds of rumors, and we'd like to put those to rest.
Mayor, Council, so assuming they go forward with this project, there's going to be 2 things that they need to do for planning and zoning. This is in the S3 district, so they're kind of conceptual. They'll have to get the development plan approved. That's done after a public hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then they'll also have to come through subdivision approval, which is also a public hearing at planning and zoning, and then it comes to council. So there'll be a lot of public input and meetings at that point if we get there.
Okay, thank you.
And for our TIF process, since we don't typically have an in-depth session in August, but we usually bring these forward during an in-depth session for council to see before we take those next several steps, and really don't want to waste anybody's time if
Sure,
there's not an
sure.
interest in proceeding. Now, they'll certainly have to move through all of the formal processes that are required
Okay.
Throughout the process.
Okay, and I have a question for Brian as well. With this proposed development, once everything is in place and we've got 60 new homes there, is that going to necessitate increasing the capacity of the Hauser Street pumping station?
That's my question, too.
At this time, I would say I don't know yet. We will have to evaluate that when they get to that point with their plans, and we would require them to prove that it either does or doesn't, and then if it does, then that'd be another step we have to take.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Thank
You might
you.
want to stay up there,
Councilman Brackett has a question.
because I'm going to add on to that. Based on the numerous meetings that we've had, resident in that area in attendance, speak to various sewer issues in that area. This does concern me in that way, so I want to make sure that that is planned for. Otherwise, I really like this project concept because it reminds me of a very nice neighborhood in Iowa City that I've seen and thought was well built, and I like the idea of providing the housing in this market level, but I've got a lot of concern about the sewer, so go ahead.
Mayor, council, just to address that real quick, you know, their preliminary proposals, it's actually tying up on what's coming off of Folium rather than that, so it's going into a completely separate sewer than the one that's been frequently brought up at these meetings.
Okay.
So it'll tie on where the actual Hauser Street sewer also ties on up at the Folium end.
Okay.
And it's completely separate, or it's in a different location? Because my concern is that if it's upstream, it'll make it worse in the spots that we've had problems before. If it's downstream, it'll suffer the same issues. So is it totally separate?
It's going into the same line that comes down Folium.
But yeah, so it'd be.
So it's
it'd be
it's upstream
Yeah,
or
it'd be
downstream?
upstream. It'd
So
be
if it's upstream, then it's gonna add to the problem.
I'll get you a minute. I'll tap in
It
on
would
this
behoove
one.
you to stay closer, Andrew.
So if I'm following what Andrew said, right, that line breaks there. So the pump station pumps south and pumps north. I think what he's saying is it would go north through the ravine from the West Hill sewer and go down around that way as opposed to going down the hill. Once again, we'll have to see the development plan and look at all that and make sure that it's up to par with what we would require. So we're not at that point yet, but we can certainly address it when that time comes, and we will.
Okay.
Okay.
One question.
Okay, I have,
Councilman Malcolm.
hi there. Mine's are pretty simple, you answered some of them. We're talking about 60 homes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And length of project is 10-year, long-term.
Yes, sir. So 10 years is the goal to have that neighborhood built out. Yep.
Okay, okay. Is there going to be some pre-construction selling pricing that you're going to do, like offer, say, you know, just say a round number, say you buy a lot for 30,000. You're selling it at 30, but you can buy it at 25,000 and move it along to help spur this and grow this?
Absolutely. Our goal, if we could have everything pre-sold before we even move dirt, that would be ideal. But when we get through the process and we're at that point, yeah, absolutely. Then we've talked with a few builders that are interested in buying some lots, and we would have those prepped and ready to go as soon as they wanted.
Okay.
The model assumes, just as an example, 12 homes in year 1, 6 in the next 3 years, and then 5 thereafter. Just in the model. That's just for modeling purposes.
You're cheating because you have paperwork that we haven't got yet.
Well, this isn't in their packet, but yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Like I said, I'm just curious.
Did you have any other questions?
No, thank you,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
thank you. Councilman Harvey?
You said, you know, they have to build a lot. Are you thinking they have to start building, say, within a year or 2 years, or what kind of a time frame are you thinking about?
We haven't nailed that down yet. We've just been thinking about each subdivision would have its kind of the covenants when you buy a lot. There's nothing set in stone at this point. It's something we've considered just because that people buying and holding lots has been an issue in the past. So whether it's 1 year or 2 years, what we want to do is just have some sort of a clause in there. And just to be fair, it would not be if you bought the lot and then you didn't build, then you would just lose it. We would have some sort of a buyback provision, is my understanding. And again, I'm not a lawyer. Don't really want to be, but the goal is whatever we do is to incentivize and not make it something punitive, but make it to where people are going to want to get in and build, but not have those lots sitting vacant. I know
This is just my personal opinion and thought that 1 year would probably be too quick. 5 years is probably stretching it a bit. So I would think the happy medium would be somewhere in between there.
And that seems reasonable, absolutely.
Councilman
So I had just a few questions. You said that this was a conglomerate of a couple different individuals that you were working together. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, so NPSW is myself, Michael Nolan, Brian Wolf, Jeff Sorensen, and Sam Paul.
Okay. So your intent is to try to do local work as far as if you're bringing contractors that are working all together from the names that you just listed?
Yes, this is kind of a culmination of a conversation that's been going on for a few years, and the goal would absolutely be to to work with local contractors, people who are familiar with the community. We see time and again that there's people that come and stand in front of you that may be from other cities, may be from other states. And in interest of full disclosure, I do live in Iowa City, although I feel like I'm here 90% of the time. But I'll qualify as semi-local. But what we want to do is have people that are into town working with the local banks, local financing, is to really to truly have a community-based project that's going to be helping the community and not. I think that other entities may have come here with best of intentions, but there's probably more of a long-term profit motivation than necessarily our market opportunity than really taking a look and say, what can we do to truly kind of work with the community?
Good. Thank you. I have one more question. In your feedback that you're going to give to us, just so I can gather that, and then maybe we can share that with the people at home. 60 by 100 to me seems small, but do you have any potential, like what you just mentioned earlier, Kelsey, in regards to saying, hey, I've seen some homes like this, any divisions or subdivisions, either Iowa City or here in Muscatine, that we can kind of put a preference in our mind and say, oh, this is kind of what this is going to look like? Because you're talking 60 homes that are going to be one level. They're still going to want to have a driveway. They're still going to probably need some sort of garage. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be side by side? Hey, my radio's too loud. I'm going to hear the neighbor right away. It's like we're right beside each other. Or is that going to be something that you can present? And I don't know if Andrews had, hey, this is like so-and-so neighborhood. This is what it's going to look. I don't know. I just trying to want to grasp that in my mind.
Absolutely. I would say from an attached, the model that comes to my mind is a peninsula neighborhood in Iowa City, and whether it's exactly that or something along that line. And that, just to be clear, that's more of an attached to like a townhouse. As we've been going through, again, we needed to have an idea of something to start with, just to put something together to see, okay, where do the numbers work? So that's why we've kind of taken this idea of the 60 by 100. And you're right, that is a smaller lot. It's probably not what people are necessarily used to. But I've sketched out a few floor plans, and it actually does work pretty well. And we are looking at going setback to setback.
I'm just saying, if you can present when you do that, give us a couple of different neighborhoods that you can say, this is what we're looking at, this is where our brainchild came from. That's fine. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your time this evening.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. We typically ask if there's a consensus to move forward from council, not formal action, but consensus to move forward to the next steps.
Council?
I'm good with that.
Sounds good to me.
I had one quick comment
Go
just
ahead.
to add on to Santos's question. Are you familiar with the Thornberry Off-Leash Park in Iowa City?
Yes, that's the one.
That's the neighborhood that came to mind for me, right around that. Is that kind of what you're?
That's the peninsula neighborhood, yes, sir.
Okay, so.
Okay, which I don't know because I'm not from Iowa City.
I'm not either, but I'll show you.
All right.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have a presentation on the Juvenile Diversion Program. Lieutenant Urak.
Evening, folks, Mayor, Councilman. Purpose for me being here this evening is really to tell you of a story of success, and that story involves each one of you, actually. And here's how that story goes. Back in December of 2017, Councilman Salcedo and I were at the holiday stroll here in Muscatine, and we were having a discussion. And in that discussion, we were talking about the goals and objectives of the city and city council. And that discussion went towards what the police department can do towards curbing juvenile crime. And as that discussion went, I really was very intrigued by what we were talking about, and eventually I went to what the goals were of what council put down in 17, and I quote from those goals, and they say to develop a youth diversion program for at-risk youth in cooperation with the Muscatine Police Department, the school district, juvenile probation, and other parties, including educational and training staff. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you that that goal and objective has been met. So, and take questions after. I'd like to explain it and be real brief about it. But we are very excited about how this will move forward. Here's how the program is going to work. In cooperation with many agencies, City Council, with the City Administrator's Office, with the School Board Office, with obviously the Police Department, many agencies outside within our county, School Board Office, I didn't already mention them, the Juvenile Probation Officer, which we have a representative here this evening if we have questions for them, and many other people that I wish I could mention. Came together with a program that is really modeled after a program nationally, but we really made it our own. And that program is really set up to work such as this. What we are dealing with is juveniles that become involved in behavior that is what we would classify as very minor offenses. We believe that if we as a law enforcement agency can become involved in these juveniles' lives in these minor offenses immediately, and while doing so involve their parents, and then hopefully steer those people in the right direction, that their chances of reoffending become very very diminished, that it decreases. And this just isn't a thing that just came off the top of our head. This has been nationally proven over several years. This program has been in place nationally and as well as in the Quad Cities. And if you wish to ask questions, about what has gone on nationally and in the Quad Cities, we have statistics about that, but I really want to bring this to what we have here at home and what we want to accomplish with our program. So, the nuts and bolts of it, this is how it's going to work. We have an individual from the police department standpoint that has stolen a candy bar, let's say from Walmart. A simple misdemeanor offense, very minor offense. Maybe they have a curfew charge. Maybe they have been picked up at the school for a tobacco offense. Maybe it's an argument that they've gotten into for disorderly conduct, a simple offense. We intervene with them, and as a police department, we get involved in their lives. We take them, we process them, our term, and then what we do is that we set that person through the juvenile court system up through a meeting that is held once a month at the public library here in Muscatine. That meeting is held for 2 hours, the first Tuesday of every month from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., of which Juvenile Court Services is helping teach. I, from the police department, helping teach. We have a Wilton officer helping teach. And during that time, we present different topics. It's behavioral topics of how to make better choices. And in that, their parents have to be present. They do not, quote, graduate from this program without a parent being present. And as we all know, kids and with their parents are going to learn a whole lot better than just them sitting in the class doing the time and then getting out and then thinking that they've accomplished something, or having their parent there. We believe that something better is going to turn out with that. So once they have completed the class, then that charge, if you will no longer or does not appear on that juvenile's record, if you will. Simple charges only. We are not speaking of serious misdemeanors, serious assaults, injuries, felonies, something like that. The very minor issues here. So with that,
Jeff, I want to interrupt real quick. Just
Councilman.
I want to, so again, just to be clear, this is only if it's their first time. It's not for current offenders. It's not for individuals that have already done something, or, hey, can I go back and get something removed? This is only for first-time offenders in this program.
Correct.
I know you haven't mentioned that. I just want to make sure so there's clarity on that.
Very good point. It is a one-time only deal. We have record system in place within agencies across the county that log, if you've been through the program, you reoffend, if you will, you are going to go through the process like you normally would. You get a one-time chance only. This is evidence-based. This is, again, something that has been proven that upwards of 50% where kids do not reoffend as a result of this, as high as maybe 80% where kids don't reoffend as a result of this. So locally, just give you a quick count of some numbers so that way you can kind of have something to grasp upon. I had just our police department take some numbers between April, May, and June. What we would be looking at, roughly about 21 kids would qualify for this program between April, May, and June. We started the program August 1st, and since August 1st up until now, we have 3 people, just our agency, that will qualify for this program come September 4th, which they will attend here at the library at 6 p.m. Our goal isn't to have 60 people in our class, certainly. Our goal is to have nobody qualify for our class. But again, our point is that I've, in my career of 26 years, there's nothing more that I like to do than to put drug offenders in prison and gang members behind bars and take guns off the street and everything like that. But I'm not so naive as to say that that works every time, because it doesn't. We need to get kids early. We need to get parents involved early. We need to infiltrate into them to curb behavior early. We're not going to get everybody, but if we get some and change that, I think that we're doing that the best that we can, and we are also meeting the goals of what 2017 of what the City Council put forward, and I think that is a great thing. I really, really appreciate the hard work that juvenile probation has helped out with this. We could not have done that without them and the work of City Council here, so thank you. Any questions?
Councilman Malcolm.
I have one. You keep saying the word juvenile, so my question is, what's the age of this juvenile? We're talking about if somebody's 16 and under or 18 and under. Where is the line drawn for them to be classified as juvenile?
It will be 17 years of age or under.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Great program.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I guess I can qualify.
I just wanted to clarify too, thank you, Councilman Spread, for bringing it to our attention, but the problem has been fixed. It was MPW hadn't switched it over yet and wouldn't answer the phone, but they did, and
Good
it's
enough.
back on.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak to council about something that's not on tonight's agenda? Hearing nothing, we'll go ahead and move forward. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes items 6A, items 8A through I, items 12A and B, and tonight's bills totaling $1,989,913.26.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Spread. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is, the motion carries with all ayes. We're going to move on down. We have a couple of public hearings tonight. The first public hearing considers the approval of the hangar apron plans and specifications for the municipal airport. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to close?
Move to close, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The second public hearing, very similar, concerns the approval of the hangar building plans and bid specifications for the municipal airport. Now is the time for the public to comment. Do I have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. We're moving on down to 11A. Presented for City Council's consideration is the first reading of an ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 3 of the City Code. This amendment will bring the City of Muscatine into better alignment with the most recent addition to the National Electric Code. Is there a motion to approve the first reading of this ordinance as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Spread with a second by Councilman Brackett. Councilman Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
And Councilman Spread.
Aye.
The first reading of this ordinance is approved.
I actually had a comment, though.
Okay?
I just wanted to comment that after reading through this, I think that it's a really good thing to correct this because it should enable better development within city limits that may have been restricted or had issues previously, so.
I was gonna say the same thing. You read the material and we're actually eliminating redundancies from code that affect cost of construction.
Yeah.
It's encouraging to see that kind of effort.
The one time I forgot to ask for discussion, you all had something. Go ahead,
I
Councilman.
wanted to know what BX cable was.
The what?
Come on up.
Jeez. You wanted to know what?
What's that?
I didn't hear you.
The BX cable.
Oh.
I was right there. I'm the city electrical inspector. That is, it's metal spiraled cable, and it's got the cable, the wires inside, but the BX specifically does not have a ground wire in it. I think that specific part of the city code came from a previous inspector. He was having issues with electrical contractors incorrectly installing it. I haven't had any issues with that. The ground wire was also, I'm guessing, the main issue there. I don't think that they even sell the cable without the ground wire nowadays.
So just so I understand what you're doing, you're basically stating that we're asking to allow Romex to be utilized more universally versus just in what I think it was, just in basements and lower sections. I'm not, just so that the people at home can understand what you're actually asking for.
Correct. Basically, the way city code says it right now, only residential. And that's the way that the NEC worded it also prior to 2002. In 2002, they changed it to allow a broader use. It was around that time they adopted the International Building Code when they kind of used types of buildings, and they just worked with the International Building Code with the allowable square footage and the allowable use of that square footage. So 99% of the time it's going to be, if there's wood studs then you can use it. Flammable material for building materials is where we draw the line. If you can use flammable material, you can use Romex.
Okay.
There's going to be a couple exceptions, of course, but that's the
All
general.
right, that's all I have. Thank you.
And Councilman Harvey?
Yeah, you said prior to 2002, the National Electrical Code said you have to use Romex, not BX cable in residences?
That was only covering Romex. That was the allowed uses for Romex. To be real honest, I did not look up that far back, the BX uses.
Because my brother lived in a suburb of Chicago, and all the houses, at least in that suburb, had to use the metal Romex, not Romex, the BX type of cables in the walls everywhere.
No, they also required conduit, which this is a type of conduit being. So in certain areas of Chicago, very strong electrical union, so forth, they require conduit because that's what the trade group wants to use. Using Romex and Muscatine is fine in the allowable. They do not allow it in commercial buildings. I didn't look at the specifics here. That may allow some if again it is studded out with wood studs, not metal studs.
Good. Yeah.
One other question.
Okay, go ahead.
The way it's worded here, it says, it brings us into better alignment with the National Electrical Code. Is that, apparently we're not adopting all of it, so to speak?
No, we have it. Are you asking if we have not adopted all of the electrical?
Yeah, there are parts of the electrical code that we're
No,
not adopting.
We've adopted all of it.
Okay.
We just haven't updated
I didn't know
this
if it was the wording
section.
there or not, you know.
Good.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
It already passed. 11B. We have presented for City Council's consideration a resolution approving the plans and bid specifications for the municipal airport hangar apron area project that we just did in the public hearing A. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
Was that Councilman Harvey?
Yeah.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11C. Presented for City Council's consideration tonight is a resolution approving the plans and bid specifications for the municipal airport hangar building construction project. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Spread with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11D. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution approving the contract and bond for the 2018 Asphalt Alley Overlay Project. Staff recommends approving the contract and bond with Taylor Ridge Construction to allow for the start of the project as soon as possible. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I got a few questions.
Go ahead.
So in the background information, can you share with us, were the other bidders close? And the second part is, why does the wording say this contract is an indefinite delivery and indefinite contract?
I'll answer the second part first. The indefinite delivery, indefinite amount, indefinite delivery, that means we're going to go.
Indefinite quantity contract.
Indefinite quantity. We're going to go based on the bid items until we run out of money. So we're not sure how far that will get us based on this bid. We estimated that we could spend $100,000. The bids came in at 123, so, you know, we may not be able to get as far as we wanted to get based on the available funding that we have. So we worded that one as well as the full-out patch the same way, so that we have the ability to stop, or if we have extra money, go further than what we had planned originally.
So then, when we bid it, then did we bid it per square foot, so we're comparatively
We
the
bid
same?
we bid it per ton of asphalt.
Per ton of asphalt?
Yeah, and then we measured the alleyways, so we have an idea of how much asphalt would cover that length and that width. That's where we get our quantity, our bid quantity from, or our estimated bid quantity from.
Okay.
The second part, I'll have to defer that to Jim. I wasn't there for the bid opening that day. I was out of town, but I think if you wanted to know how close they were.
If they can just send me an email. I'm
Okay,
fine
we
with
can do
it.
that.
I just want to make sure that when you said the indefinite quantity, that just threw red flags for me.
Okay.
But I'm good with it.
That's something we're probably going to move more to doing in the future, just because it helps us to, figure out where we can go, where we can't go.
Yeah, but in my view, again, if you're indefinite and saying okay to a certain limit, that's totally fine. But when I when I read that,
it's not in there in the memo, but yes, there's
whenever
a
you
certain
sit here
limit.
and how do we budget for stuff like that?
Right. Okay. Anything
That's
else?
all I have, Your Honor.
I don't hear anything. Thank you. Hearing nothing else, Councilman Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We are on 11E. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution authorizing the assessment for unpaid abatement costs and unpaid rental inspection fees to private properties. Periodically, the city takes action to assess unpaid nuisance abatement costs to private properties. The nuisance abatement costs for snow, junk, and weed removal total $6,060.93. The administrative fees are $1,625, and the assessment fees are $1,950. The total fee being requested for assessment at this time totals $9,635.93. Excuse me, is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? I actually have a question, Dave. I know the assessment fees are $50 per property. The administrative fees, I thought, were a set amount as well.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
We have assessment fees are per incident, whereas the total number of incidents are a special assessment once it gets to this point. Does that explain it?
No.
In other words, if you had 3 incidents of primarily, let's say this came, a lot of the reason why this is higher is because this is from a month or so ago. We got the bill for a lot of lawn mowing that had to be done. And so you could see 2 or 3 mowings happen that no one paid for. And those would be assessed at $25 each. $75.
For the
right?
administrative fee.
For each event. Yeah.
Okay.
And then $50 is on top of that
Is
because
the assessment fee.
because that puts the reports together that we set up to once approved by council
Sure.
to be recorded at the county.
Right.
So that's the difference between the two.
But I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't get the administrative fees to work out at $25 each. But I can look later.
Well, you do have the report, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's how that.
Oh, because the administrative fees are typically $25 per incident, and the assessment fees are $50
Right, for all of the
for
incidents.
all of them. Yes.
Yeah, for one property owner
Right. Okay. Thank you.
during that time
And
frame.
is there any other questions?
One little one.
Councilman Malcolm?
So if we say, I'm not gonna point out the person, but there's a fee on here for $139 for securing a property. They don't pay it.
Yes.
What happens next? Do we have the ability as the city to put a lien out for that $139?
Well, effectively,
Do
we
we
are.
send them nasty letters? What do we do?
Well, effectively, we are. By doing the special assessment, we are now on the tax bill for that property.
Okay.
After so long, the county, well, last year, as some of the councilors will tell you, that the county got sick of carrying a lot of empty and vacant lots that they ended up transferring over to the city. And we ended up with a lot of unpaid assessments and fees on those properties that go towards, if we sold those lots, are taken off. So in other words, we don't have to necessarily pay the county back anything. But yeah, what happens is we effectively are putting a lien on the properties.
Okay. So eventually, in theory, we're going to get paid.
Yeah, we're getting paid about 80+%
Okay.
collection on these fees.
All right, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I recall, that's a lot higher percentage than years past.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's very, very much improved since I got here 4 years ago.
Well, it's very noticeable for me as on council that we're now getting these practically monthly instead of yearly or something like that, you know.
Yeah, you weren't getting these every 6 months to sometimes a year. We were 15 months backlogged on this when I first got here.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate it.
Got it.
Hearing nothing else, Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. 11F, presented for City Council's consideration is a request to lower the speed limit on Hauser Street from Lucas to Grandview. The proposed change would lower the speed from 40 to 30 miles per hour. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilman Spread. Is there any discussion?
I just had a comment. I'd had a few discussions with people in regards to this, of why such a drastic move from that, if there was a potential of it being 40 to 35 versus 40 to 30. What was the real reasoning besides just the traffic that they know that's going to come through the trails? Obviously, the negative comments that it's just going to be another, trap for vehicles to
Another
get
speed
ticketed,
trap.
speed trap type things, but I don't believe that's the intent. But if the real desire is to get to 30, why not move it slowly than one jump of 10 miles?
Well, you also have the new parking lot that's going in place down there, and you're going to have significant traffic or pedestrian traffic crossing at those 1 or 2 points. Once that is in place, you'll have those 4 soccer fields and 203 parking stalls.
I know, and we've had the current, soccer fields there for the last 20+ years for that too as well. So I'm just giving my feedback of what the
but not
public is
the
saying.
200+ parking stalls on the opposite side of the road.
I know, I understand. I'm just
Andrew, do you want to add something?
Mayor, Council, I can kind of shed some light on the logic that the traffic committee on this. Primarily, this is driven by the construction of the 200 and some parking spots on the opposite side of Hauser from the soccer fields. That'll obviously generate a lot of traffic, foot traffic back and forth across that, as will the trails and the other amenities we're building on Hauser. So wanted to drop that down to 30, which is a safe speed to bring pedestrians across there. The other reason for 30 instead of 35 is when you get on the top of the hill from Lucas on up to Mulberry, the speed limit on Hauser is 30, so it was kind of a consistency issue too. So if you, for example, if you're doing 30 from Hershey to about Musser, which is the main part where you have the pedestrian crossings, you'd have that 30. You'd also have 30 on top of the hill. So for that stretch, which is a little over 2,000 feet, it didn't really make sense to have a different speed limit on there, is the logic
Right.
of the traffic committee.
But my point was that I have to ride my brakes going down the hill from Lucas to Hershey because the grade is so steep. If I don't ride the brakes, I can easily go 40 or 45 miles an hour. And I was riding the brakes the other night and I looked down and it was 36. So for that, would it be possible, Andrew, just to drop the speed from 40 to 35 between Lucas and Hershey and then go to 30 miles an hour? Because you have to come to a stop at that stop sign anyway.
So you're saying just have 35 on the hill?
Just have 35 on the hill. Because it's hard to keep your car going slow down that grade.
Well, considering and I'm sorry, Brian, considering the condition of Hauser Hill, I would be riding my brake or just slow down coming down the hill. I mean, I'm sorry, it is, I use that a lot going to the transfer station and so forth. It pull a trailer, it's not any better. So I would say keep the speed as low as we can get it at 30.
Councilman Brackett.
How many days a year do we use the soccer field?
Oh, that's a rich question.
That in that area currently.
He knows in his head, I know he does.
How many days we use the soccer fields, is that what you
Yes.
said?
Yes.
April 1st through October 31st.
How many days are there people using it? Not how many days is it available, but like
Well,
what I'm looking for is how many, because I
Percentage.
use Hauser, I use that street quite a bit as well, and I honestly, like, I can hear the soccer games, but I don't feel like drive past a lot of times when there's things going on. I know that because I know there's a limit to how much we can use those fields before they wear down and it actually causes them to lose quality.
But you are going to have an increase in parking across the street from the soccer. We're going to encourage that.
Absolutely.
So we do want it slowed down traffic-wise. How many days out of those months? I'd say at least 3 out of 4 weekends each month are used, except for the month of July and the first part of August.
And you are going to have, with the new fields that are at no cost to the citizens, correct?
The practice fields.
The practice fields.
We are still
You're gonna
working,
have,
we're still working on that fee structure, so let's not go too far with that.
But you're gonna have people parking in the soccer complex parking lot.
Well, yes, and it's also a trailhead there also, when the West Side Trail goes through. So there will be
So I mean,
much.
we're talking at least once a week, relatively. Currently, there are people down there on the weekends when there's going to be more general traffic anyway. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with it. I've had some negative feedback on the concept. I see the need for it. I don't think I'm going to oppose it, but I'm not I don't really like it a whole lot.
Well, do we have a plan for how the people are going to get across the street? Are they all just going to run across the street one at a time, willy-nilly? I mean, that's going to be...
They will anyway, but there are controlled intersections there.
I'm thinking there's going to have to be
No, there's-
some kind of a stop sign or a crosswalk or...
There's 2 crosswalks that will be built into the project. It'll be the
Okay.
same controlled crossings that's on Colorado there by Yaki Shack.
Okay.
The same thing there, so they'll be encouraged to cross those areas. Yeah,
So there'd be flashing lights?
yes, if you activate
Yeah,
them,
with
yes.
the push button?
Yes.
It's like the one on Mulberry, or I'm sorry, on
Colorado?
Colorado.
So let me ask you this, Rich. How soon is this parking lot, locations and the crosswalks, is that going to be actually in place?
We're hopeful by the end of October, if construction season holds up for us. So end of October, it'll be in place. If the weather holds out great, there will be drop-in usage next year, not this year. So the month of early November, late October, you'll see usage on those fields. Not this year, though. Not until at least next year at this time.
You might as well get the residents used to slowing down, going down through
Well,
there.
that's the only
But
thing
again,
that
you
I'm
will have
thinking
your
about.
trail at some
Yeah, but
point.
that's a drastic drop.
One comment that I got, the person compared this to the corner of Hauser and Fulham. where there's only a problem there for a certain period of time in the morning and a certain period of time in the afternoon. But yet we're changing it all the time just because of those two little pieces. And that kind of went to the question that Kelsey asked. So it's not even 50% of the time that people are going to be over there in that parking lot. And yet we're going to change it year round for the few days that it's being used.
So we're gonna.
Well,
Hey, I wasn't at the traffic committee, guys, so I don't know
Well,
what
I
the discussion
hear you,
was.
but I'm saying,
I'm
But
willing
we're
to
doing it
move
for you
forward.
though, Rich.
Yeah.
That's what we're
I'm
saying.
willing to move forward with changing it, just, I mean, because we're gonna, I mean, with the construction going on, people are gonna need to slow down for that anyway, if there's stuff going on back and forth over there, so that'll be a good test. I mean, it's not like we can't change it back if we decide that it was the wrong decision
And you've
anyway,
actually got
but,
5 amenities over there.
Right.
You've got the soccer complex, you've got Kentstein parking that fills up, you have John, help me out, Pollinator Park, you've got the dog park, and the trailhead. So you've got 5 different amenities over there, all in that same area.
yeah. and
So then why can't we look at this in September or October? I mean, we don't even know if we really have that problem yet. I mean, if we want to vote, that's fine, but I'm not gonna vote on it.
The construction, I think, for me, is the
I
biggest
mean, we're gonna
push
have
to,
construction, but they're gonna be making just typical parking spaces. They're not gonna have construction like we're gonna see, you know, they're building construction on blocking roads.
I just mean the extra traffic of the construction vehicles are gonna be, you know.
Councilman Harvey.
My thought on this is, if part of the year and part of the days of the week, et cetera, we may not have the need for a slower speed, I would not be in favor of having a seasonal speed, for instance, on it. What's 35 this month and it's only 30 the next month. If we're gonna have to control the speed, we need to do it. We just need to do it.
The person I was referring to wasn't suggesting that there be a seasonal, just why are we making an all-the-time change for a small window of time?
I
It
would
wasn't
not
me.
Can I
But
call the
like a-
question, Mayor?
Pardon
Please.
me.
Call the question? Okay.
You can finish talking,
Well, I
Councilman.
was just gonna say, wouldn't want this like a school zone, you know, where it's 25 when people are present, you know, nothing like that.
Hearing nothing else, we're going to go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The request is approved with 6 ayes and 1 nay. Next, we have presented for City Council's consideration a request to increase the speed limit on Mississippi Drive from between Green Street and Broadway. The proposed change would increase the speed from 25 to 35. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
I move.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Malcolm with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. I just want to make a comment. This is, not very often does this council increase the speed limit on a stretch of road, so this is.
I have a question. What is the distance between Broadway and Green roughly?
2,000 feet?
And at Green, does the speed pick up and stay at 35 then? I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay.
Mayor,
you
Council,
stop.
what we're really doing is putting this back the way that it was before we opened Mississippi Drive. Upon the completion of the section of Mississippi Drive that we opened, that speed limit will be 25 miles per hour. We carried that through to the Carver Corner area. The Carver Corner area hasn't developed like we thought it would. It's going to be some time before anything happens there. So the police department has had the ATA camera out there. They took some traffic counts. They took some, they measured speeds and realized that over 20% of the population speeds through there anyway. They're going the old speed limit. So it just felt like it didn't make sense to have it there. We can transition coming into at the bluff, if you will, at Broadway, where the median comes in. We transition to 25 going in that way, and as you come out that way, past Broadway at the bluff, you transition out to 35 miles an hour. That's what it was before. So the distance between Green and Broadway, I don't know, a couple blocks. I mean, it's not that far,
My
but
concern was, are we slowing down again once we do this? But no.
no, you'll decelerate going into downtown and you'll accelerate coming back out.
So Mississippi Drive won't be the same speed the whole way through?
From the bluff to Mulberry will be the same speed. It's once you get out past that to the Broadway at this point, it'll change.
So
And then
from the bluff to Mulberry it'll be 25.
yes.
Yeah, and then from going the other direction, it's 35.
Right, and then whenever we decide what we're going to do at Carver Corner, we can modify the speed limit at that point in the future.
But the goal is to have the streets be the same speed limit the whole way of the street, right?
Well, not all the way.
Said.
The Mississippi Drive section from the bluff
Right.
to Mulberry, yes. And we may want to do that when we develop Carver Corner. We're not sure how it's going to develop yet.
Okay.
The proposed speed limit on Grandview will be 35, Jim? 30 or 35? 35. So as you come closer to downtown, you'll decelerate coming into the downtown area where it's divided.
But if you remember, we also pulled that section out of the Mississippi Drive project until a later date. So that was done in preparation for that project, which didn't materialize. So we're just putting it back to the way it was.
Sure.
Right.
I oppose this change because I think it's inconsistent. I think that, we changed the speed there. Now we're going to encourage people to come flying through the downtown, and I think this is a bad idea. I don't know if we can put up something additional besides just a speed limit sign, which people apparently are ignoring anyway, some people. But, the problem, is now we're going to encourage people to speed up again. They're going to come flying into the downtown, going 35. And I know this because I live on Mulberry, right where the speed changes from 25 to 35. And the number of people that pass me while I'm going to my house is ridiculous when I'm in the 25-mile-an-hour section, or the people that are riding up on me after changing from 35 to 25, at that change. I have people nearly run into me on a regular basis. So in this area, to me it makes more sense to change the speed at a spot where we stop, not come around the corner, hey, keep going 35, and then come into a spot where there's things to look at. You're going by the bluff, there's interesting things there's stuff off to the right, there's some distracting type things in the area while you're driving, and oh, by the way, slow down too. And then, oh wait, I got to figure out how to turn here to get over to Contrary. So I'm very opposed to changing the speed limit again on this section. I thought, we dealt with enough issues when we changed it in the first place. We should leave it that way.
When are we going to put a roundabout there?
I'd like to see that come back up too. I know you're making a little bit of a joke, but I'd like to see us move forward on that sooner than later.
I just think it's amazing that you're concerned about the speed and then you're trying to get to the Contrary Brewing.
I'm saying, well, yeah, but I'm saying when you're coming from, that's the first thing to turn.
I know.
If you're going to try and figure out how to get across the median, people have.
I know.
I'm just adding the different complaints in there.
Anyone else?
When you're coming from that direction, but.
Thank you, Brian. Hearing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The request is approved with 5 ayes and 2 nays. We're on 11H. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Track Masters Incorporated in the amount of $168,100 for repairs to the railroad crossing on Dick Drake Way. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilman Brackett. Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. When was the last time this intersection was repaired? Because it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
That was the other one.
Yeah, there are multiple crossings in this area.
Right.
So the one that was farther west, if you will, closer to Grandview, that one was done last year, I believe. This one is the next one, and it's closer to MPW. It actually goes to their power generating plant, I believe, is what it is.
So that's the one that goes across there by Musco, or is it the one that comes across there by Tantera and?
It's the one closest to the river, if you will.
Okay, okay.
And I believe there was a drawing in the packet, or I put one together, but it circles the one that was there. So it's the longer angled crossing.
Brian, while you're up.
Yep.
Go ahead.
How long is this going to take?
Yeah, okay.
I honestly don't have a timeline for this. It's going to be complicated because it's so bad. And my understanding is the railroad ties are rotted, so they'll have to be replaced. which will entail probably picking up the rail, getting that out of the way, putting a new subgrade in, putting new tiles in, putting the rail back, all new hardware, new pads. I'm sure they'll do it half at a time so we can, I'm not sure, but we're going to have
Yeah, I
to
mean, 'cause
have
if you
them do it half a
you
time
do
so they can.
The full close of that, then you're
We're putting
directing semi-traffic basically right back into town.
Yeah, we're putting GPC at a disadvantage if we do that. They use that crossing, I believe. So we'll work with the contractor once we get approval from council to do that, to find the best way to get that constructed.
Do we have a number? It says in the background that MPW is going to pay a portion of this because this obviously goes to their
I think it
feed.
said maybe.
Well, may pay. So do we have any of that?
That's an item up for discussion. The rails themselves cost $20,000. We're reviewing a rather old contract.
Yeah.
I still don't even understand how we own these things, but that's fine on another thing. But my deal is just, yeah, I mean, it's going to take an enormous amount of cost and time to fix these.
The rails themselves, I believe, are around $20,000.
I believe it was 27,000 for the rail portion.
There's a question of whose responsibility that is.
Right. We got a little bit of an ambiguous contract that we'll have to sort out.
Yep, and I think that's for another discussion. That's all I have.
Okay.
Councilman Harvey.
I hate to embarrass myself by asking this question, but was this budgeted?
It was budgeted, yes.
Yeah.
We knew we had this
In-
coming up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit over what our budget is, but it was budgeted
Within
at
budget?
$150,000.
Within Public Works?
Pardon?
Within your budget?
Roadway maintenance.
Okay.
The rails would not have been budgeted. We've only done rails, I believe, once, and that's when we had that, we didn't have the train, but there was that train derailment. I believe that's also part of that same MPW contract.
I have one minor question. My question is, how much of the maybe is MPW possible? Are they gonna pay for ties, rails, or do we?
That's a $20,000 to $27,000 cost for the rail,
Just the rail, just the steel.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how much, say they may pay for a portion of, well, how much, are we talking about 10%, 5%?
It's
3%?
$27,000.
27,000 of the 160.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Or whatever that number is.
that's what's up for discussion,
Okay.
that amount.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Did you have something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, do it before steel prices go up.
That's a consideration as well. That's what this quote is for. We want to get this going.
Do we have to
yeah.
pay a tariff on that?
Thank you, Brian. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11I, presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Pittsburgh Water Cooler in the amount of $8,579.85 for drinking fountains at the new Muscatine Dog Park. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Next, we have presented for City Council's consideration a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Affordable Metals in the amount of $14,982.92 for sunshade shelters for the Muscatine Dog Park. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Spread. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11K. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the continuation of a lease with the Iowa Department of Transportation for the Mark Twain Overlook. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion? How did we get by for a year without a lease? Don't say anything? Okay.
Keep going.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11L. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to authorize the 1819 City Deer Hunt to be held September 15th of 2018 through January 10th of 2019. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
moved.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion?
I only have a simple question. Can we make this with turkeys too? That's a serious question. Can we do one with turkeys?
With turkeys?
We can do one with turkeys.
Okay.
I did talk-
I'm not asking to add anything. I'm just asking if, it just made me think about that, whether we could or not, so.
There is a program we'd go through with the IDNR
Okay.
to have turkeys, and it would be by bow hunting. I just talked to them a week and a half ago about that.
Okay, well, if we have a future issue with turkey population growth, I would say that maybe we should look at that, because I know that I had about 40 of them come through my yard last year, and I know there was something happened, I don't know what happened exactly with
Have
those.
you recently
but
had that many?
There was relocation.
I know there was a relocation.
That's
by
what I was,
the time, but-
that's what I was saying. There was a big turkey
Chicago.
roundup last.
Yeah, I have
months.
not seen
Like
them
that?
lately, but I know,
But he's eating a lot of turkey at home.
Fresh.
yeah.
If you do
Sal
have
and
a
I were
turkey,
comparing numbers on them, so.
there are a couple citizens that do. If you do have a turkey issue, you are encouraged to contact Greg Harris with the IDNR. He would be happy to come over and look at it again. He did
Okay.
last couple months, a few months.
I'm asking for the residents in the area that that had issues with them. I didn't actually have a problem with them because they don't like dogs, so.
The only
Councilman
problem,
Harvey, go ahead. Go ahead.
Throughout the years, have we had much in the way of complaints, feedback from the general public about the deer hunt?
Very few complaints. If we get some complaints, it would be that they would like less deer taken than more because they like to drive through and see the deer in the community. And then the other side of that, landscaping beds just get atrocious than, of course, your car accidents. More deer last year were taken than in previous years, I think 61. Pretty good solid core of guys and girls hunting, 45 to 55 each year. So yeah, it's a passionate group.
Any of the complaints based on just for the concept of hunting deer?
There's a couple.
Okay.
You bet.
I don't like hunting one with my car, so I'd rather people hunt them with a bow.
Well, I do, too. I'm not complaining. I just wondered whether
Rich,
you had to field a lot of questions along that line.
Greg had something.
I just wanted to note, there was that 2-acre minimum, so you've got to watch that.
But you can combine with
You can
your neighbor.
combine with your neighbor. Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Councilman.
Rich, I had a citizen contact me in regards to this, asking, have we ever evaluated or looking at individuals qualifying or attempting to hunt on city grounds that are not being used?
When we first started the program, we did allow on public grounds, and there were some uncomfortable things at best that took place. And sure that the council decided that that was not in our best interest to continue that, so we've not since the first 2 years.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay. When I do the deer hunt meeting in a week and a half or so, there will be an interest from them to hunt on public property. And again, we'll be saying the same thing. There's just, that wasn't a great idea to allow hunters in parks, in the cemetery around fresh graves, and so on.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We are now on 11M, and we have presented for City Council's consideration a request to declare display cases from the old Musser Public Library as surplus, and then donate them to the L&M, Louisa Muscatine School District, for trophy cases. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Finally, we're on 11N. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order in the amount of $35,850 to Crawford Heating and Plumbing for the Absolute Air MAU to Crawford Heating and Plumbing. 3 bids were received, and Crawford Heating and Plumbing had the lowest bid. There's $50,000 budgeted for this expense. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Any discussion?
One question.
Sat here all night for one question, John.
I couldn't let him go.
No.
You just had to get, yeah.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the atmosphere in that building kind of is hard on metal,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
which I appreciate, but is the new ventilation system, is there any, like, is it going to be stainless steel where it won't corrode out, or are we just replacing it with?
We do have a
in-kind?
special aluminized metal, they call it. It's a stainless steel actually will corrode from the inside out, they've found, with these heat exchangers and different things with hydrogen sulfide. So they're not any better, and they've had trouble with them. So they didn't recommend that we use a stainless steel. We use a lot of stainless steel metal parts in that building, but not for heat exchangers and for these MAUs. They didn't recommend it. So it's not just loose, it's not soft metal. It is a special metal that is treated to resist corrosion, but it's not stainless steel.
Because obviously this could be a recurring issue, you know, if we didn't eventually address it again, you know, so that's.
Correct. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that question is.
So this is a heat exchanger?
It heats the air before it sends it into the building in the winter. Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Anything else?
Is this for the building that has those big lifts and the tracks and then the great big pools that spin around?
Yep. That's the
I remember
one.
from the tour. I don't remember what. Well,
That's the one. It's the grit building. That's the
Couldn't
first.
wait to get out of that one.
It's the first building where all the gases are expelled into the air, and it's a very corrosive atmosphere. It's for the second floor, and that's where the most problems are.
Okay.
So it takes the most heat exchanges and air exchanges to evacuate that air.
Yeah, that was an unpleasant smell.
Yes, we're working on that too.
I know you are.
Yay.
Hearing nothing
Okay.
else, thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Next, we're on communications. Councilman Harvey, do you have anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Malcolm?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Spread?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor?
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Yes, Your Honor. I had a citizen call me today about the detour sign that's in the outside lane at Main Street. People kind of have to go out and around it in order to continue on up toward Carver Corner. Is it possible for that to be moved back into the right-of-way?
Thank you.
You might as well sit right there. on
I
that
needed some
one.
more exercise, but yes, it is possible. We put that there as a deterrent to keep people from going that way, but at this point, we could move it to the right of way.
Okay.
So we'll talk to the
Yeah,
contractor
this
about that.
gentleman felt it was a safety hazard because apparently he's been cut off trying to get around.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we can address that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Brian, while you're up there, just sorry to go off turn if you have anything else. Are we coming along on River Mississippi Drive, getting close?
Yes, it's very close.
So can we start?
How close is it?
Yeah, I mean,
How close is it?
yeah.
I would say our projected schedule was end of September. I feel comfortable saying that we'll make that for sure. What I would like to do this time is to have it done before we open it and have to come back and close it for a period of time. It's happened a few times on the other section. My preference would be just to get everything done, punch list done, and open it one time and be done. So that may go a little bit longer. It won't be longer than the end of September, I hope, but I want to have it right before we open it this time. So we hurried on the other section just to kind of get people through downtown to help with the detour and the traffic flow. This time we want to make it all the way done before we open it up. So, and we'll open it from Mulberry out. We won't have probably the intersection of Second and Mulberry, or Second Street won't be all the way done, but we'll open from Mulberry out to Carver Corner when that's completed.
Thank you.
Were you done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
Councilman Salcedo, did you have anything else?
That's all.
Thank you, Brian. Councilman Brackett?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Staff?
Yes, I'm going to ask Nick to come up to the podium. We have an issue that came up this afternoon. We have 3 weeks between council meetings and a narrow window for irrigation and seeding at the soccer complex. And Parks and Rec would like to issue a purchase order and just, I'm not looking for council action, but consensus to move forward. So, Nick?
So grading for the Hauser expansion is coming along very nicely for those of you who haven't been down to see it. So our goal is to be able to seed this fall, and in order to seed, we would like to have irrigation there for the seed to properly get germinated in and for a better growing atmosphere. With that, we're looking at putting in an irrigation system, and we had talked about that as part of the plans and specifications. And staff is looking at getting the parts ordered for this irrigation system so that they're in, so that when the final grading's done, the irrigation system can be established in as soon as possible. And as soon as that irrigation system is installed, then we can get in and get the seeding done to, again, get a quicker germination. So we're asking for the ability to move forward with the purchase of the irrigation equipment so that it's here and ready to go as soon as the final grading's done.
There's one distributor for 7 states, I believe you said?
Yep, that's correct.
For this brand name?
From MTI Distributing for the Toro irrigation system, which is a match to our current irrigation system at the soccer complex.
So if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and issue a purchase order in that amount, since we have 3 weeks in between.
Councilwoman Brockert has a question.
Is this work going to be done in-house, Nick?
Yes, it will. The installation of the irrigation system will be done in-house.
Okay, thank you.
How much will it cost?
Councilman, oh,
We're just looking for a consensus?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Saucedo.
How much will it cost?
For the irrigation parts, for the Toro irrigation parts, it's going to be approximately $21,650.
But without it, you don't have a field.
Okay, thank you.
So we can't vote on it, but we can give it,
So
Councilman Malcolm.
my question is, this was something we've already talked about and budgeted.
It's part of the project, and this
Right.
was coming out of the 120,000 from Field 2 that we were going to
Okay,
postpone.
okay. So we've actually set this aside, we're not, okay.
Yes.
Do we have a consensus, council?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Thank you. Nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you. I just had a couple things. Our guest for our city this coming Tuesday is Rosa Mendoza with the Diversity Service Center and Jennifer DeFosse with the Farmers Market. The next coffee with the mayor is August 25th. A reminder, we have no council meeting the next 2 Thursdays. And finally, I just wanted to close by saying happy birthday to my Aunt Jenny. Wilson was dispatcher for the public safety building for 30, 40 years maybe. A long, long time, my whole life. Thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.
All right.